All right. Hello, everybody. Go ahead and let me know that you can see me and hear me all right. All right. Thank you. Good to have everyone here. Kathy, Katie, Millie, Taylor. If I'm not mistaken, Taylor, is this your first class with us? You're welcome to chat something in the box if you want. We are pretty flexible about cameras and microphones. It's really whatever people want to do in terms of using those. We know a lot of people are often multitasking, doing other things, eating lunch. So that's fine. There's no obligation. So, but anyway, welcome to you, Taylor, and to everybody. This is our last class before Thanksgiving. So we will have no classes next week. I'll be sure to send out a email reminder early next week to remind you about that. But definitely hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving. Hopefully, maybe you can enjoy some time off from work. You can maybe enjoy some of your favorite Thanksgiving foods. Okay. Definitely should be a part of it. All right. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Actually, we're going to talk about holiday eating and kind of how to approach it and some strategies to help you navigate all the food that's kind of coming up here in the next little while. All right. Um, you guys have any questions or concerns or thoughts on your mind before we move into the materials for today? Okay. There were some snowflakes out there today, not too long ago that I saw. I don't know how everybody feels about that, but it's here, man. Winter is here. All right. Oh, Katie. That's awesome. I heard yeah, Vanessa was really pleased with how it went. She really felt like, yeah, everybody was into it and kind of relaxed and chatting and, just chilling. And hopefully, you learned some good strategies for that whole kind of cook once, eat twice kind of concept, right? Um, that's awesome. Very good. And bring on the snow. Okay. Yeah, that's kind of always been my theory. You guys, some of you may know, I'm a transplant from upstate New York, so snow and cold is nothing new to me. Um, and I guess I still feel like whenever it's just gonna be this cold out, it might as well just snow. If it's gonna be cold, it might as well just a little snow, a little bit, maybe just to look pretty or enough for my kids to sled a little bit. I know some people may be cursing me for saying that, but all right. Oh, Kathy, you're on board with that? All right, good. I even, because I get burned every year with my kids and them wanting to sled, that I'm never proactive enough about buying sleds or, winter gear. And so when it actually does come, then you can't find winter gear or sleds, right? When the snow is actually in the forecast. So I went and I bought a little snowboard and a sled for my son at Target yesterday, and I got some new snow pants and snow gear. So we're ready. But I joked with my husband. I said, now that I've bought all this stuff, it probably means it won't snow. That's how it goes, right? But hopefully we'll get to use it at some point. Okay. So this recipe and your other supplemental materials for this week were from Vanessa. Roasted honey nut squash. Honey nut squash. That sounds new to anybody? Anybody heard of honey nut squash? I had not heard of it until I saw her recipe for this week. You probably are familiar with butternut squash, right? Yeah, Kathy, you've never heard of it either. Um, yeah, I know. That's the first thing I think of. For a moment, I almost thought it was like a typo or something, right? But no, honey nut squash, it's a thing. I do think it's a newer variety. It's a hybrid variety of squash. It's a hybrid variety that originates from a butternut squash, okay? And so they specifically, I think, engineered this honey nut squash to be smaller, sweeter, I think a little bit more tender in terms of the skin and the flesh. So I guess that's its appeal. And, kind of like an acorn squash or a smaller spaghetti squash, because of its smaller size compared to some of the butternut squashes, it cooks probably a little faster too than a butternut squash would. So that's always a plus in my mind, right? I'm always looking for the thing that cooks the fastest. Now, this recipe is designed to have a very specific flavor profile, and it uses some ingredients you might not typically have on hand. Um, White miso paste, I'm thinking in particular might be something you don't usually have, maybe rice wine vinegar, parsley, sesame seeds. Um, if you were not inclined to purchase those ingredients, or weren't sure, if it would be worth that investment, you can make honey nut squash just like you make acorn squash or butternut squash, right? Where you are going to slice it up, you're going to scoop out the seeds and the, stringy stuff in there, and then you can put butter, maple syrup, maybe a little cinnamon in it like you do for any other kind of squash, and roast it that way. Okay, so just know you don't have to follow this recipe exactly. This sounds like a delicious combination of ingredients, but if you look up roasted honey nut squash, you'll see basically butter, maple syrup, cinnamon. That seems to be the pretty standard formula for this and all the other winter squashes. Okay. All right. Anybody cook other types of squashes, like roast other kinds of squashes? What I mentioned, butternut squash, spaghetti squash, acorn squash. I guess those would be the main winter squashes. But yeah, I mean, these are in season now, right? They're probably going to taste the best and be the cheapest right now because of that. Also, would be a great dish to add to your perhaps Thanksgiving menu. But it's packed with, vitamin A, that beta carotene, and fiber. So good. All right. Any questions about this one? Okay. All righty. Okay, so let's transition into our topic for today of holiday eating. We're gonna approach holiday eating from a couple of different perspectives today, all right? And this is an annual tradition. It has been in Eat Well for a long time, where we talk about holiday eating strategies the week before Thanksgiving. Again, that kind of kicks off what a lot of us see as kind of the holiday season, and where there tends to be, more food around. Okay, and that can feel overwhelming. And so people like to, I think, hopefully, like to just kind of think about it now before all of it happens, maybe, strategize a little bit, get a little bit of a game plan, give themselves a little pep talk, just kind of get ready for that. All right. We're going to talk about it from a couple different angles. This first page, we're going to talk a little bit more about like the mindset of how to approach the holidays when it comes to food. And then on the second page, we're going to look at a little bit more like specific action oriented strategies that you can use during the holidays. Okay. So they're just, I think it makes sense to kind of look at it in two different ways. All right. Because honestly, a lot of times the very specific action strategies don't work if your mindset is not really kind of in the right place for that. Okay, so it does all kind of work together. We want to make sure we got our mind in the right place, and then it's a lot easier to implement those strategies once you do that. Before I talk about any of this, though, I'm curious what's on your mind in terms of the holidays and food, and um, maybe which strategies you have used in the past or plan to use again that you find helpful for kind of navigating all of the food that is available. Millie, that's funny. Thank you for sharing that. That was, I think, like the first thing someone shared in class yesterday when I asked this question. That was one of the first things, or at least talking about portion control. That was like the big theme. And that's certainly something that using smaller plates helps you do, right? You consume smaller portions. Yes, so that is a fantastic strategy. I don't actually have that listed very specifically on the second page of strategies, but it's a good one. Trying to grab the smaller plate or bowl whenever you can, because the research tells us what's really interesting. The research tells us is that We judge how much food we have based on the weight or empty space on a plate or bowl. So if you pick up this huge plate or bowl and then you put a little tiny amount of food on it because you're trying to watch your portions, your brain's thinking, we don't have enough food. The bowl looks empty, right? There's all this white space. And so that is how you start feeling like, oh, I need more, or oh, I'm feeling deprived because my plate and bowl look so empty, right? So it really does work as kind of one of those ways to trick your brain. I plan to exercise more because I can't stay away from some dishes. Okay. Well, and just making sure I know, Katie, you've been around with us here long enough to know that we always want to make sure we are not, you know, making exercise into something that's, like a punishment for eating something, right? We don't definitely want to set up that dynamic, but I understand what you're saying about, that is one way to create some balance. Um, Again, as long as it's not turning into a, like, I have to earn it or burn it situation, right? And you like to be active, so even better. Yes. Okay. Yes. Um, but no, I think the exercise is a great idea, or just, movement in general, more movement, because it's also a really great stress relief. I think a lot of people feel a lot of stress and emotions during the holidays, and we know that movement is one great way to kind of instantly help bust that stress and elevate your mood. So, it helps with that as well. Okay, so let's look at some of these kind of mindsets that we might want to try to embrace, because what we really want you to be able to do, I mean, my goal for you, Vanessa's goal for you, is to be able to enjoy food during the holidays without guilt, shame, or anxiety. Because this is the problem. We often want to enjoy the foods and we eat them with the intention to enjoy it, but we end up still feeling guilt about it, or shame, or some anxiety about, should I do this? Oh, I don't know, right? Um, and when we're doing that, having those feelings, we can't truly enjoy it. Those things cannot occur together. Okay. So we want to be able to put that guilt, shame, and anxiety in its place so that we can truly enjoy the foods that we choose to indulge in. One of the best ways to do this, of course, is to commit to not restricting food before or after the holidays. Have you guys ever heard of Last Supper eating? Right, it's a very biblical reference, but yes, Last Supper eating. This whole idea of like, now is my chance to eat all the things because I don't know when I'm gonna get to have it again. And this happens all throughout the year. It happens maybe when someone plans to maybe start a diet, right? Do the Last Supper eating. I have had people tell me when they come to see me for a consult that they do Last Supper eating because they think I'm going to tell them that they can't eat like all their favorite things anymore. I mean, so this is a very real mentality that happens for people. But it's exacerbated during the holidays because looming right around the corner is January, and you're going to be bombarded by advertisements and all of this, about, getting in shape in the new year, New Year's resolutions and weight loss, and, repenting for, all the indulgences of the holidays, right? So when you know that that's right around the corner, it can lead to this Last Supper mentality. But also, being too restrictive in the time leading up to the holidays, whether it's immediately before or maybe that's just been your kind of MO the rest of the year to be overly restrictive, well then sure, the holidays also become a time for Last Supper eating or opportunistic eating, really, in that situation where, oh, I've been depriving myself and restricting all this time. Now all the foods are here and I'm just gonna, kind of go for it, right? No holds barred. Um, so this helps us avoid the extremes if we commit to not having any, real intentions of restriction before or after the holidays, right? We're going for balance, sure, but we are not going for extremes of restriction and deprivation. And part of this is giving yourself permission to enjoy your favorite foods. What are some things you guys are going to give yourself permission to enjoy that maybe you don't usually eat other than during the holidays? You must have some favorites. Ah, stuffing. Very good, Kathy. Oh, oh, okay. That's Katie's too. Pretzel casserole? Oh, Angela, it's good to have you here. I didn't even realize that you had signed in. I'm so sorry. Okay, I think I might need to know more about pretzel casserole. I'll Google that after class to find out. Mom's desserts. Yeah, Millie, I'm with you. I'm just like dessert in general. I don't usually have, you know, I have desserts throughout the year, but it's not a regular thing. And there's certainly some special things during the holidays. So desserts are usually where I make the extra room. Oh, that was your son. I'm sorry. I didn't even make that connection. All right, that makes sense now. I wasn't sure if that was somebody new I had overlooked or what. Thank you. Okay. So yeah, so figuring out, for a lot of us, we can anticipate what foods are going to be around that we know, again, we're going to want to enjoy. Um, oh, it's a dessert. I guess I was thinking it was more of like a side dish. Pretzel layer, cream cheese, whipped cream, strawberry jello. Oh my God, that sounds so good. I mean, really, anything with like the sweet and salty, I'm in on, and anything with cream cheese and whipped cream, I'm definitely in on. Ah, yeah, it's a salad, definitely. Nice. Pretzel jello. Okay. Oh, I learned something new today, you guys. But yeah, so giving yourself that blanket permission. Now, that doesn't mean you are going to eat everything that you see and want all throughout the holidays. That's not what this means. Permission is not the same as, you know, again, no holds barred eating, but it means that when something is there that you would like to enjoy and it fits the moment in terms of what your body is telling you it wants, it needs, you have permission to have it. Okay. Doesn't mean you ignore all other, again, signals from your body in terms of hunger and fullness and what you need and all of that. But it just means when the time comes, you always have that permission, right? And that's again where we go to listen to what your body's telling you, right? So that has to be part of the decision making. It's not just about, oh, everything I see that I want, I'm going to have it. It's, yeah, we're going to start with permission, but then we're going to narrow it down a little and think about, am I hungry? Am I full? What is my body telling me in terms of what type of fuel I need, right? A lot of people, after a while of eating some of these indulgent things, maybe you guys have experienced this, after a while, maybe of eating a lot of sugar or more carbs than usual or higher fat foods. Sometimes after a while, your body's like, ugh, right? Like maybe this doesn't feel so great. Maybe it's a little sluggish feeling or it's bothering your stomach, right? And so maybe, sometimes our body, if we're listening, it's telling us like, hey, let's lay off of this for a little while just because we don't feel good with it, right? Um, and so listening to what these signals are, right? Identify anchor habits to maintain some normalcy. This is a concept I'd read about years ago, and it always stuck with me. But the idea is, the analogy is like a boat that's, anchored in the harbor, right? So when a storm comes, say, or, it can't get blown away, right? It's going to stay anchored to where it is and can't get, pulled out to sea and go adrift at sea. Because I think sometimes that's how many of us feel, right? That we're normally pretty anchored in place, doing our thing, and then the chaos of the holidays come and we're adrift at sea, right? Anybody feel that way? Yeah. It's like we've lost the compass, we don't know where we are, and we are just kind of winging it. Um, so that can feel pretty yucky in those situations, right? To just feel kind of completely off course. And so what anchor habits do is help you try to stay kind of moored, anchored in place, all right, as much as possible. So thinking about, maybe two or three fundamental habits that you would want to commit to continuing with throughout the holidays. Any ideas? Some people yesterday said things like continuing to eat breakfast every day. Um, a lot of people said staying active, kind of like Katie already mentioned. Yeah. Oh, good. Angela, yours is exercise too. Yeah. Um, maintaining your water drinking habit. Maintaining, oh, somebody said a sleep routine, maintaining their sleep routine, okay? So even though you know maybe some, certainly things here and there are going to be off routine, out of the normal. If you can identify some anchor habits that help you feel like, okay, I'm maintaining some sense of normalcy, that will help. All right. If you want some, try some. If you love it, savor it. So again, going that back to that permission piece, that if you want it, yeah, and it fits the moment of what your body wants and needs, go ahead and try it. Decide within the first bite or two, though, if it's meeting your expectations. And that's where a lot of us kind of, I think, can have some trouble. That once you start eating, it's almost like, well, now I'm just going to eat it. Or once it's on your plate, you're going to eat it. And so we still need to really try to think about, when we take that first bite, is this what I thought it would be? Is it meeting my expectations? A lot of times this stuff maybe doesn't meet our expectations. It's a bit of a disappointment, and you are not obligated to eat it, and you probably shouldn't at that point. Okay. So really trying to assess how much you love it. And if you do love it, then continue eating it and really try to savor it as mindfully as possible. Okay. Brainstorming non-food ways to cope with emotions. So, like I was just saying about exercise being a great stress relief during the holidays, yeah, there's a lot of emotions. I mean, there's just the chaos sometimes of just disruptions and routines and schedules, and we're going to actually talk about that in December a little bit more. And that triggers stress and anxiety for people. But there's also emotions in terms of maybe, dealing with grief or loss this time of year. Family dynamics certainly can cause certain emotions. There's a lot of financial strains out there for people right now, causing a lot of stress too. So yeah, there's going to be these emotions that, maybe are there all the time but get exacerbated during the holidays. Maybe they're new during the holidays. So we want to anticipate that and really try to think about what are some non-food ways we cope with emotions. And maybe you can draw on what you do the rest of the year. What are some ways you have found to cope with your emotions that don't involve food? But now is the time to, kind of make your list of what those non-food coping mechanisms are, so you have it, you know, readily available to call upon when you need it during the holidays. And tell your inner critic to take a hike. There's going to be times, right? This happens all the time, but again, exacerbated during the holidays, where you're going to be like, oh, I ate too much. I feel fuller than I wanted to. Or, oh, I ate that pie and it really wasn't even that good. And, there's going to be times where you just feel like, whatever, you didn't follow through with the plan as successfully as you wanted or intended. Mistakes were made, and that's going to be part of this. Okay. But we can't let ourselves, kind of fall victim to the inner critic that wants to tell us, like, oh, you're a failure. And oh, this is totally going to derail your efforts. And, there's no use in trying anymore. And all those things that the inner critic wants to try to tell you. Okay. We've got to try to show ourselves some self compassion, understand that, some of these setbacks are going to happen. Okay. And trying to just, again, be as kind as we can to ourselves. All right, so let's look at some of these more specific action strategies. Let's first look at maybe when you're at an event. I mean, I guess it could be in your own home, but I think of this typically more as like the office potluck, or again, something where you're out with friends or somebody's house. Okay. Um, Planning ahead. So really trying to think about, how can you structure the rest of the day perhaps to help balance out what is coming as best as possible? All right. So maybe for Katie, like she said, maybe she's going to do a little extra activity at some point. Um, Somebody yesterday mentioned that when they go to these, holiday food events, there's often a lot of carbs and sugar and fat. And so the rest of the day, maybe they try to load up on fruits and veggies and lean proteins, because those are the things that are probably going to be less available at these events. That's a smart strategy. Also, making sure that you're, properly feeding yourself throughout the day. You certainly don't want to go into one of these food events with, raging hunger. Okay, that is It's kind of like grocery shopping. We don't want to go grocery shopping when you're really hungry. You don't want to go to these events with a lot of food when you're super hungry either. Okay. Trying to socialize away from the food. This is a tough one. I know at my house, I have one of those like I'm gonna host Thanksgiving next week. And at my house, I have one of those big open, like there's the kitchen, and then there's a big counter, then there's an eating area, and then there's a living room, and it's all open, which is great for entertaining. Um, but while I'm in the kitchen, preparing stuff, everybody else is kind of hanging out across the counter. And I do usually put some stuff out for, I've got nephews and my kids and whatever. We have, a range of things. We have some chips and we'll have some shrimp cocktail. And my mother-in-law makes this crazy, super not healthy dip that's delicious. And, it's all sitting out on the counter. And I noticed because that's where everybody's socializing, that's where everybody's eating. And my sister-in-law, one year, she said to me, she's like, because she was standing there talking to me while I was cooking in the kitchen and she was snacking. And after a little while, she's like, "Oh my god, I can't believe I just ate all that. I was just standing here and just, like, eating it." I mean, she realized what she had done, but that's what happens. It's very mindless, right, when you're socializing and the food is right there within arm's reach. So, you know, as the hostess, I don't know if there's anything I could do to try to help alleviate that situation. I'm gonna think about that this year, but definitely if you're at a get together where that is the setup, maybe trying to at least just stay arm's length away. Maybe, I always put little plates out so that people can make a little plate for themselves and leave the area. Um, that's a good strategy. So if there's plates or something available, try to just make your little plate and move a little bit away from the food to socialize. Okay. Browsing food before you take it. This is one of my favorites. So if I'm going somewhere, no matter really how much food is being offered, whether it's like a huge potluck at work or a smaller, get together at somebody's house, I'm always kind of browsing what's available first. Anybody else do that? Because you know what happens, right? Especially when there's a lot of options. If you just kind of get in the line, take the plate, and start taking a little bit of everything that looks good, I mean, your plate is full by the time you're like halfway through the line. And then there's still a bunch of stuff where you're like, oh, I really would have liked to have room for that or try that. So it's good to, oh, Angela, you like that strategy? Yeah. I think in sometimes it's physically difficult to do. I know I've been to a few work potlucks where it's so crowded that it's really not feasible or I feel like appropriate to try to be nudging my way around to see all the food that's available. So sometimes it's not possible, but usually it is. But at least trying to just look, as far as you can to see what's available, what's down the line. So you can really think about, ooh, that's super good. That's something I want to try, and you can start to prioritize. Learn to say no. We had a whole lesson on that last week about net social pressure to eat. So if you feel like this is something you are going to struggle with, please go back and review that lesson. But that is definitely a big part of these events is having polite ways to say no or decline food or not eat food that you don't want to eat. And then sometimes alcohol is a part of these get-togethers. Uh, Not at work usually, not at my work at UK, but maybe other situations. And that might be part of the fun, but we also want to be careful. I mean, not just from a safety perspective, but also from a nutrition perspective that, alcohol, yeah, sure, it is, you know, calories, but it also increases your appetite. And that's typically why we feel kind of munchier and hungrier after we've been doing some drinking. So you do want to be aware of that. Maybe try to eat something while you're drinking, not on an empty stomach. Maybe alternate an alcoholic drink with a non alcoholic drink to try to pace yourself a little bit. So just being careful with alcohol. And then at home, just some things you can try to do in your own food environment at home. Like we said, maintaining routines. Maybe the anchor habits is probably a good way to think about that. But really trying not to put your body in a tailspin. Really trying to maintain some basic routines in terms of sleeping and hygiene and movement, right? Grocery shopping routines. Just trying to again keep as much normalcy as possible. We're going to have a whole lesson on that about, routines being disrupted during the holidays and strategies for that. Control your environment. We talk about this any time of year. But especially this time of year where there is just food everywhere, you might want to really think about what you have stocked at home, making sure you have a lot of appealing, nutrient dense options at home. Maybe you keep the other, play foods to a minimum because you know you're going to have more access to them outside of home this time of year. But just think about what's going on, what you have at your house. Plan easy meals and snacks. So maybe this is the time of year that you get some more, prepared convenience items where it makes it easier to throw together a dinner. Maybe this is where you cook a couple extra servings of something so you can put it in the freezer and have it as a backup meal when, days and nights get busy in the next coming weeks. Give food an escape plan. So we probably are going to be gifted food, perhaps. Maybe you'll be feeling obligated to take food from something and bring it home with you. Sometimes that happens. So thinking about what you might do with food that comes in your home. Um, Throwing it away, as controversial as that is for some people, it is it's an option. It is a legitimate strategy. Maybe giving it to someone who would be thankful to have it. Maybe, you view it as a burden. Maybe somebody else would view it as something that they really welcome. Maybe regifting if it's not open. Again, controversial, but some people do it. Um, Maybe putting it in the freezer. A lot of people freeze like Christmas cookies and things like that. A lot of that freezes well. So yeah, just thinking about what you're going to do with this stuff, okay, if it makes it in your home. And of course, again, giving yourself permission to enjoy the things you want to enjoy, okay? Um, that's certainly, comes first. Enjoy what you want to enjoy and then find the escape plan for the rest of it. Plan food-free activities, right? I do believe that a lot of the, I guess, joy of the holidays does involve food, and that's okay. I think that's just part of it, and there's nothing wrong with that. Um, but I do think that, there can be an over focus. Um, and so trying to just, find food-free things you can do with friends and family, maybe instead of doing that cookie exchange, could you all go, walk a 5K together or, go walk around a neighborhood and look at Christmas lights or something, right? Um, Doing, things like board games and puzzles and stuff like that at home with, family. Huh, thanks, Katie. Yeah. Yeah, I'm big on like, what I was thinking too? I know I'm going to New York with my family this year. And I notice at our house there, my mom puts away, it's always been the tradition that when we're done eating, all the food gets cleaned up and put away pretty immediately. And I notice my husband's family here, the food stays out for a long time. And so people end up going back and like picking on it and eating and stuff. Again, this is just totally a random thought, but I was thinking that, once the food's put away, we transition to other things and we, get board games out or puzzles and all of that. And so we have things to do that don't involve food and the food's put away. So it's not an option. So it's kind of like a win-win. So that might be something to think about as well. All right. And then finally, I'll let you look at this on your own. It's adapted from the authors of Intuitive Eating. It's a holiday eating bill of rights. It's really cute. I hope you read it. My favorite is the last one, though. You have the right to eat pumpkin pie for breakfast. Pretty sure it's what I will be doing next Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. Yes. And I'm not going to feel bad about it at all. All righty. Well, I hope this was helpful for you guys, whether it was maybe just review of stuff you kind of already, feel like you have a handle on, maybe it gave you some new ideas. Um, but I do hope you enjoy time away from work, time with friends and family, and enjoy some good food as well. Thank you. All right. Yep. Happy Thanksgiving to you guys too. Thanks for being here today. You guys take care.